Hi everyone, this is Mary and welcome to Super STEAM at Home Junior Edition. Today is our Gumdrop Engineering Challenge. And that challenge is going to be to use the supplies you've gotten in your kit to build the tallest structure that you can that will stay up for at least 10 seconds without falling down. It can't lean on anything, it can't be attached to anything. It needs to stay up on its own for at least 10 seconds, but also be as tall as you can make it. Okay, and engineers are the types of scientists who figure out how to build things. That's why this is called an engineering challenge. And a special kind of engineer called an architect is especially concerned with building buildings and wants to make sure they're beautiful, but also make sure that they work well, stay standing, and fulfill all the functions that are needed of that building. And along the way, lots of different types of engineers help the architect get that building built. So in our kits today, you will find 30 gumdrops and 50 toothpicks, or if not toothpicks, then these little white sticks. Okay, some people probably got the white sticks. Some people might have gotten the toothpicks, and they will both work on this challenge. The other thing that you'll have in your kit is a paper plate that you can use to put your building on, so it has a nice even base, and also a data sheet that has your rules on it for how you need to build the building, but also has a place where you can put your data, where you can put your measurements and your results of your building. Okay? And what you might need to supply from home are a ruler or a yardstick so that you can measure how tall your building is, and also some kind of timer, a kitchen timer, or if you want to use a timer on one of your parents' phones, that's great too. Okay, so these are the things we will use to design and build our building. But before we start, let's think a little bit about how buildings are made and what kind of basic shapes they contain. When we look at buildings, if we're out for a walk or down in Chicago sometime, we can see that they're made of a series of basic shapes that help them support themselves and stay up. This is the Ida B. Wells home, and we can see that it's got some arches. And this is the Fourth Presbyterian Church on Michigan Avenue. It also has arches that help support its weight. This is the Elks Veterans Memorial in Lincoln Park. That has a dome, which is like a bunch of arches lined up next to each other, and columns to support its weight. And there's an arch there. Okay? And we're not going to do very much with arches and columns and domes today, because those are rounded shapes and we're building with toothpicks, but I wanted you to know about them. Here's the Hancock Building, downtown. And what are the shapes you see there? A bunch of diamonds, right? Crisscrossing each other. If you look at them closely, though, you see that there are beams that go across, that intersect right across the middle of the diamond. And when you do that to a diamond, you end up with triangles. Okay, so this building has lots of triangles. And those have an important support role. This is the All Saints Episcopal Church, a very old church in Chicago. And we see lots of triangles there too, don't we? All kinds of triangles and also rectangles. This is the Willis Tower, and all sorts of rectangles there too. This is an old firehouse in Chicago, and it's kind of a square. It's got lots of squares and rectangular shapes. This is Lake Point Tower. You may have passed it on Lakeshore Drive. It's really like a giant triangle with rounded corners. It's a big rounded triangle. Okay? No sharp corners, but still a triangular shape. And here's an even more basic triangular shape. You won't see this in downtown Chicago, but you might see it if you go camping. It's a tent, and it is a triangle. Okay? So those are all shapes that are important in helping buildings stay up, helping them stay stable and strong. So let's think about how we might make some of those shapes, okay? Let's make, how about a square first? A square is a pretty simple shape to make, isn't it? Okay, there's our square. But maybe not so good to build with in that form. Should we make it more 3D? And when we make a square 3D, what do we call it? Call it a cube. And we've got to connect our gumdrops here with our toothpicks to finish off our cube. Okay, and that's a basic building shape, is a cube. Yeah. Now, there are some, remember we talked about triangles too? Another basic building shape. Let's make a triangle. And the nice thing about these gumdrops, if you find that you've put something in the wrong place, maybe you stuck your toothpick in a spot that you really didn't want to stick it in. I'm going to switch this one around. I'll show you what I mean. You can just pull it out and put it back in. Okay, because these gumdrops, that's why they're good to build with, because they're kind of sticky and easy to stick things into. Okay, so there's our triangle. But again, maybe not so good to build with if it's just flat like this. Let's build a couple more triangles and maybe put them together. Yeah. We'll join these up. Okay, that's almost done. We might have to change the direction of these toothpicks a little. Put them more towards the middle. And we'll put a toothpick this way. And look what we've got. We've got a 3D triangle. We've got, it's like a pyramid, right? One triangle on this side, one triangle on this side, one triangle on this side, and one on the bottom. We have 4 triangles making this pyramid. Okay. This is a triangle pyramid, but there's another kind of pyramid we can make, which is a combination of a square and some triangles. So let's do one of those. Okay, we've got our square. And now we're going to aim from each corner of that square, we're going to aim toothpicks towards the middle. And how are we going to get those to stick together? With our gumdrop. I'm going to use a colored one so it's easier to see. Okay. So this is a square-based pyramid. Okay? It's got a square on the bottom and 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles on all the sides. This is a different kind of a pyramid. I don't have it centered too well. There we go. But that's also a triangular-based shape. Okay, so we've got our triangle pyramid, we've got our square-based pyramid, and there's one more triangle shape I'd like to show you. I did this one a little earlier. This looks kind of like, let me take these out of the way. This looks kind of like our tent that we looked at, right? Like a pup tent. Okay, and this is called a triangular prism. So this has a square on the bottom, but also a square on each side two sides, and then at the end that forms a triangle. So this one actually has 1, 2, 3 squares and 2 triangles. So all these triangle shapes are pretty good for building. Okay? So think about these, but also don't forget about your squares when you build your structure. And there's other shapes you can use too. There's shapes that have more sides than 4 sides, more sides than 3 sides. So keep an open mind about the shapes you want to use and do some experimenting and see what combination of shapes gives you a structure that's strong enough to stand up for 10 seconds, but also as high as you can get it. Okay, how did your model work out? Were you able to make it really tall, and did it stay up for at least 10 seconds? Let me show you a couple of the ones I did. Here's one that was by far my tallest, and I tried to make it even taller by putting these little gumdrops on the top. And I put some over here too, but I tried to balance it with the ones on this side, but this did not want to stay like this. Okay. And even my whole tower, even before I set my timer, it won't stay up. See what happened? It twists. You get all these squares in a tower, and they tend to get weak at the corners, at the joints where the gumdrops are, and then the whole thing starts to twist and fall down. So that's not a good model, even though I did use a lot of my gumdrops and toothpicks. Here's a square, here's our cube, right? And we can see already it's starting to twist. It just doesn't seem like a very stable little building. Now when we take our little triangular prism here, one of our triangle shapes though, that seems quite a bit stronger. If I give a little nudge on these joints, on these gumdrop joints, they are pretty twisty on the cube. On the triangle, the triangular prism, or even the other triangles, if you made some of those, you could try them. Those seem a little sturdier. So I tried some shapes, building a bunch of triangles. This is called a truss. If it's got a bunch of triangles combined like this, kind of like a bridge sometimes. So this is pretty strong, but I used a lot of my equipment making it strong like this. So it's not nearly as tall as my twisty tower, but my twisty tower didn't stay up very well, so that didn't do me much good. Another possible model, I put a bunch of triangles together in this kind of a shape. It's got 5 sides on the top and the bottom, and a series of triangles along the side. So each one of these layers is pretty stable, okay? Pretty strong. And I can combine them in various ways. But my problem here too, I've used a lot of my supplies already. I only have, at this point, I only have just, I think, 5 more gumdrops left. And I do have 15 toothpicks. So you could try something like this and figure out what to do with the remaining toothpicks. Possibly you could just, we don't have enough gumdrops to do too much reinforcing. But we could possibly add another layer here, and that would be pretty tall. Not as tall as our one that wouldn't stay up, but if it doesn't stay up, it doesn't help to be tall. So think about triangles, other shapes that you might combine with the triangles, whether they're squares or whether this is, like I said, this is a pentagon with 5 sides and 5 points, and see if there's a way you can combine those to have a very sturdy tower that will stay up, but is also pretty tall. Okay, and when you've found a successful one, don't forget to write it down on your data sheet, make a record of it, and I also have some questions for you. What was the hardest part of this? What was the biggest challenge? What was the best idea you had during this exercise? Okay, and look, I didn't even get to start my timer before my tower fell down. So sometimes maybe your tower stayed up for 5 seconds, but not 10. Maybe it stayed up for longer than 10 seconds, but it wasn't as tall as your tallest one, which wasn't sturdy, which is what happened to me. So just do some more experimenting with it. If you'd like to send me a picture or a description of what your tower looked like and how long it stayed up, that would be great. You can send me an email at youthservices@olpl.org. Thanks a lot for building with me. I'll see you next time.